This week's guest on the Cowboy Up podcast is Marty Freese. Marty Freese and Russell True have been good friends for years, and they share a deep love for White Stallion Ranch and its long history as a guest ranch and a southern Arizona filmmaker's destination. People like Ronald Reagan, Gene Autry, George Clooney, William Holden, Audie Murphy, and many other notable celebrities have spent time at White Stallion Ranch. A couple of observant guests saw Tom Hanks at White Stallion getting ready for his role in Castaway. Marty shares with our listener a who's who of what happened here at the ranch. Enjoy this compelling conversation. Good morning, Mr. Russell True. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm especially good because Alan Day and Lynn Weezy Sneed are sitting here with us. We somehow coaxed them back, so we're feeling lucky today.
The adults are back in the room. I like that. I like that. How are you, Alan?
Well, it's always a treat to drive out here from Tucson. It feels like you get out of one part of the world and into a better part.
It is amazing. A 15-minute drive makes all the difference in the world.
You can't describe how much difference.
No, you can't. And I bring people out here, and they're blown away by the change from the street to inside here. They can't believe the world is so different.
Yeah. Well, it's always a treat for me. I'll promise you.
And it's a treat for me to have you back in the room. It's exciting because you were where this whole thing started about 5 years ago. Yeah. So between you and Russell, it's pretty remarkable what you guys created. I personally appreciate it.
I like the friendship part, and we've become friends, and I just look forward a lot to coming out here.
Well, then we'll try to coach you back more often if that's going to work for you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, okay. We'll just go over to Alan.
Well, we can do that.
Set up and just screw up the whole mechanisms over there and have fun doing it.
So, I like that.
Yeah, well, we'll do it. So Marty Freese is with us today, and it's kind of one of those odd stories. Marty lived he could have walked to the ranch if he was enthusiastic. And he knew more about movies in southern Arizona and White Stallion Ranch than we did, and we didn't even know about Marty. And here he was, this really well acknowledged expert on movies in this area. So Marty did for a long time tours of the ranch, and he had photos and different things of the pretty significant celebrities from Jimmy Stewart to Ronald Reagan, et cetera, who'd shot here. So Marty's with us today. I thought he'd been on our podcast. I guess we've done enough of these, Alan. I don't remember who's been on and who hasn't.
Well, that's a good place to be.
Yeah. It is good to have done a lot. I don't know if it's good that I don't remember. But anyway, welcome, Marty.
Thank you.
And why did you move to California? I mean,
I don't understand that either.
Well, I love Tucson, and I love the area around northwest Tucson. But my wife has Sjogren's, which is a dry condition where she can't produce saliva. And in 2020, the air got so bad here in Tucson because we had no rain. And COVID hit and everything was shut down. And, she said, I just can't live here anymore. I want to, but so we'd been over Oceanside plenty of times. And, she needed somewhere where the humidity was in 30-40% range or something. And we didn't want to go anywhere where it was real high humidity, like back in the Midwest or anything. So I told her, she said, Hawaii or California? I said, well, I can't live in Hawaii. It's too far from the boys and, our granddaughters.
Yeah.
So we chose San Marcos, which is right next to Escondido. So anyway, the climate's really helped. But we come back to Tucson about 3 times a year, probably. Avoid the summer, of course. But
well, if you're going to be someplace in California, it doesn't get a lot better than San Marcos. I got to be honest with you.
That's a nice area.
So, Marty, as I've gone through this exploration that I've been privileged to go through with White Stallion, and looking at our the historical nature that is White Stallion, the movies that have been shot here, and that sort of thing, you have been absolutely integral in helping me piece some of these things together. The pictures you've had, Even Russell was saying before we went on the air here that you knew things about White Stallion that he didn't know.
Well, some things. Of course, he was busy running the ranch, when he was younger. Or his folks were running the ranch, and he was younger when a lot of these things happened.
Well, I used to tell the story. It's true. Marty's telling me, this movie, that movie, and I knew some of them and knew most of them. And then he told me two that I didn't know. And it's one thing if they'd been made in 1939 or something, because he told me about a girl who, the gal who...
Gal took the West.
Took the West. Okay, well, that was 1939. I wasn't here. But two of the movies he told me about, I was living here at the time, so I missed some. I was a kid.
Yeah.
But
Relentless ended up being one of your favorites. Right?
Relentless, yeah, one of my favorites. Yeah. And
Robert Young.
Yeah, and a lot of the ranch was shot in that. So it's a lot of those movies they really grabbed the movie pass areas, and of course always wanted to get Safford and Panther in the background.
Oh,
but
yeah.
Relentless was just kind of all over, and
yeah.
So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Here's another one for you too, Russell, that I just kind of came up on, and I thought it was filmed in Nogales and Sonora, Mexico, but there might have been one clip, and it looks like the ranch area looks like they was on Twin Peaks Road. It's called Johnny Stew Pigeon. Dan Duryea and Howard Duff, a 1949 movie, and Shelley Winters was in it too. But they filmed a clip right outside the ranch here, so I guess you might be able to include that in your
well,
list.
Now I got to go. You got a copy of it? Can I get a copy?
You can actually find it on YouTube, and about 1 hour into the movie, you'll see the Tucson Mountain Range. Yeah, It's an hour and 16-minute movie. So.
Well, and Dan Duryea and Shelley Winters were in movies.
Dan Duryea was, really interesting because he was playing those bad guy roles, and then Richard Widmark came along and kind of stole his thunder. But I always liked Dan Duryea a lot. Of course, he was great in Winchester 73.
What's the name of the movie?
It's called Johnny Stew Pigeon, 1949.
Okay.
Odd name, but yeah, it's out there. So.
Well, we're gonna, and Shelley Winters was, which one was she in?
Winchester 73.
Oh, she was in Winchester 73.
Yeah, she was in the hideout on the other side of the mountain there.
Right.
Lazy K Bar side there.
And I've got to think a lot of these places that you're referencing, like the hideout, it's probably still exists at some level, doesn't it?
Well, the hideout doesn't. It was built in 1950 just for the scenes. But I found a lot of mortar that was left from the set. It's actually up on the movie road, and it's on the other side. If you start the trail up to the top of the hill, it's right on the left there in the rocks. And I happened to find it because a man and a woman asked me if I knew where they shot the scene. I said, yeah, I'm pretty sure I know where it's at. So I met them on the other side of the mountain, and we went up there, hiked up there, and I found the mortar. So my wife and I had been up there before and found some pieces of it. And then I matched up the pictures, from the movie with the rocks and everything. So,
what amazes me is how many different things have been built up there. The different adobe walls. There was the miner's shack for New Maverick. There was, of course, the fake rock that was some of the infrastructure is still there. I mean, it's pretty well gone now, but that was for Bottom of the Bottle. And, for years I've been told it was called Bottom of the Barrel. I never could find a movie Bottom of the Barrel.
No,
by the way,
that's the Bottom of the Bottle, Joseph Cotton.
Right.
1956 movie.
Yeah, and it was based on a real life story, and I was in fact down in southern Arizona, and they were talking about, because that's where it actually occurred, is down near to Nogales. And because they were crossing the Mexican border to get his jail escaped brother out. But so it's amazing how many things have been built up there, and for the most part now they're all gone except for that paper mache. Is there a movie that was shot here at the ranch that's your favorite? Is there a standout?
Just getting ready to ask that.
Well, obviously, Winchester 73 is, one of the. I was a big fan of Jimmy Stewart anyway, and Richard Widmark Backlash. Donna Reed rode over the pass in the early scenes, opening scene actually, and there was a little burned out hideout there, and Richard Widmark and Donna Reed did their scenes there, and then in 1955 they used it in Guns of Fort Petticoat. That's where the Indians gathered before they attacked the mission there at Old Tucson Studios.
Right.
And then 1 year later, Long Ranger and Tonto rode down the top of the hill to the old burnout encampment, and then they rode away. So that was there for 3 or 4 years before they tore it out of there. But I always wished, I could have seen that in person. But I did find some base and mortar, from the set. I've actually got a rock piece of mortar from the top of the hill in Jimmy Stewart's Mountain Road. It was down there south of Patagonia. They built this fortress up on top of the hill. It was there for several years. And there are steps going up the side of the hill. My friend PJ and I found the old steps. They were, grown over, but we went up the top of the hill and we found a bunch of pieces of mortar and brick up there that they used for the set. So I took one of those big pieces of brick home with me, and I had it in my backyard for a long time. I actually still got it, and I put it in my wife's garden.
So you're the guy that took that. You're the guy that took that. We've been looking for that piece of rock.
I'm sure.
So you've done a lot of you're an acknowledged expert, and you've done a lot of tours over at Old Tucson and done events down at the Empire Ranch, et cetera,
yeah.
Long resume. Talk about we had Al Harper on a while ago.
Oh yeah.
The guy who rode in on his white horse and saved Old Tucson.
Yep.
Talk about the connection between Old Tucson and White Stallion.
Well, obviously when they were shooting the High Chaparral, they ended up shooting 17 episodes of High Chaparral on your property. And the last episode was filmed there too, the 98th episode. They built an Indian village up there by where you come in at the gate, or the arch, the White Stallion Arch. And they built an Indian village right off to the side of that. And they brought the Indian girl back and exchanged her for Cameron Mitchell, who was being held hostage. So that mountain range right there was like perfect for those episodes. At Old Tucson, they could go a little farther out, not too far away from Old Tucson Studios, and shoot other scenes. So the mountain range at Old Tucson, Panther Peak, and that was a perfect background for a lot of those scenes. So that's why they use that so much. And there have been other things filmed out that area too before, but I actually got a call one time from your ranch. It was a Sunday, and they said, we've got a guy from Hollywood here who wants to take a tour with you. And I always told the ranch, if there's anybody comes here and wants to do a tour that, famous or anything, just give me a call. Well, I still lived just a mile or two away from the ranch, so I bopped right out there. It was on a Sunday. Ended up being Ben Burt, who was the sound man for Lucasfilms. And, I got in the van, took Ben up to the movie pass. He wanted to see where the rock was where Jimmy Stewart hid behind in Winchester 73.
No, I didn't know this story.
Yeah, he talked to a sound man. He talked to the sound man from the movie, and he said, we went out in northwest Tucson somewhere, I don't remember where, and we hung a gun on a tree, and we fired the gun, and he said, we recorded the sound, and that was the shot they used throughout the movie, and they ended up using it in a Rifleman television show. So wow. Ben said, well, I'd really like to see where they shot those scenes. So I said, well, I know exactly where it's at. I'll take you up there. Well, we got up there and we got talking. We forgot to take pictures. So I went up the next day and took about 50 pictures for him. Got up on top of the hill where they did the gunfight. The gunfight happened with Steve McNally and him right on top of the mountain there. And, Jimmy Stewart came from the bottom and climbed his way up, and which was actually Jimmy Stewart doing that. So, that's one of the most famous movies filmed there, but all kinds of scenes shot up there in that movie pass. And my wife and I actually found the window rock. And I don't know if I've ever showed you that before, Russell, but Jimmy Stewart looked through a window rock in the movie. And that's right up there behind those fake boulders and stuff, that were built for bottom of the bottle.
Right.
Used
Right.
in Winchester 73. But I was with one of your groups one time up there, and these two English ladies, they wanted to take a picture back inside there like Jimmy Stewart. So I walked them around the back and went up in there, and, I looked around, make sure everything was okay. The girls got inside there, and I went out and took a picture, and holding a picture of Jimmy Stewart in the same spot. So the mother was thrilled. She was all excited. Anyway, like the next week I went up there, and I was showing the people, and we were peeking in there, and there was a rattlesnake in there. And I thought, oh, man, I guess I should have looked around a little better up there when I had them girls up there.
Anyway. That movie, we knew some of the movies, and it's maybe we added Johnny Stool Pigeon today, but I didn't know a thing about it, and there was no local anecdotes about Winchester 73, one of the great westerns ever made. And so I get a call here at the ranch one day, and I probably told this story on the podcast before, so I apologize if I did, but they said, there's a young man here who wants to talk to one of the owners. He wants to ask about a movie. So I go up, and there's a kid in his 20s. And he said, well, Winchester 73, which ties in with your story, had innovative audio in terms of this gunfight, and it was cutting edge at the time. It's kind of known in the movie making business. And he said, so I'm fascinated with this because my interest is movie audio. And he said, I think that this movie was shot on your ranch. And I said, well, I have no idea. I've never heard that before. I think I probably would have. So the kid says, well, let me show you these. He said, I've made these still pictures off of the movie. They're not very good, but he said, maybe you can ID if it was made on your ranch. And he shows me, and sure enough, it was clearly movie pass. And I said, well, kid, you don't have much of a life, obviously, but you've done well here. You've found it. I don't know how. So sure enough, he said, well, can I go up there? And I said, sure. And I got him up there. So that's how we learned. It was one of those movies that we didn't learn about from Marty Freese. I think the ones were, what was it? Young Billy Young,
Robert Mitchum,
and
Robert Walker Jr.
And what was the other one around that time that you told me about?
Five Savage Men.
Yeah, and I was
called The Animals originally.
Yeah, I was living here. So anyway, we got to take a break.
Calling all cowgirls. This is Erin DeLong, Durango Boots Marketing Manager. Don't forget to apply for the National Day of the Cowgirl Scholarship. Our Durango Boots team is awarding a $30,000 scholarship to one U.S. or Canadian freshman female currently enrolled in a 4-year college program who is pursuing a Western-affiliated degree and embodies the spirit of the American cowgirl. Apply online today at nationaldayofthecowgirl.com. All applications must be submitted by December 31st, 2024. If you're still looking for the perfect Christmas gift, Durango Boots has the boot for you. Durango is offering free 2-day shipping on all online orders from December 13th through December 18th. Head on over to durangoboots.com to find your perfect pair.
Okay, Marty, now that you've been living in California for a little while with your wife, what are you up to? What do you have going on? You got projects there, or what's happening?
Well, mainly I'm, when we first moved here, COVID was still around, so I did a lot of editing and stuff I wanted to do and get caught up on that. I did a photo history of Old Tucson Studios. I did a ballpark video, 2 of them actually. And then I started singing at nursing homes and assisted living, memory care. So I really kind of made a connection there. I do like happy hour. Every week I sing at this one place in Vista, and I sing for 45 minutes upstairs and 45 minutes downstairs. So that's a lot of fun because, you're bringing back memories to people like that, and they remember the lyrics. It's really surprising, but you sing a song like Teenager in Love and they'll sing right along with you, or Boots Are Made for Walking, so
Yep.
I feel like I'm bringing them a little bit of entertainment, and I get paid a little bit for it. I don't charge
quite a
too
little
much
bit of
like other
entertainment,
guys.
actually. Now, these are people that are in memory care?
Yeah, memory care and assisted living.
Okay.
I do assisted living too, and sometimes I do a party for them or something. Or I'm doing karaoke on New Year's Eve. This one senior apartment.
Well, I did karaoke once on New Year's Eve, and I was asked to leave, so I didn't know what to do with that. It was not a good thing.
You were just too good. That's what
oh
it
yeah,
was.
I'm not thinking. They didn't mention that.
They
It
don't
was
like the
never brought up.
competition. Yeah, they probably didn't like the competition, Stephen.
That's what it was.
Marty, something I would appreciate it if you would spend a minute or so talking about is the relationship between Old Tucson and White Stallion Ranch, and some of the reciprocity they must have had between them when Old Tucson was in its heyday.
Oh yeah. Well, obviously High Chaparral. I think we mentioned this, but High Chaparral ended up shooting 17 episodes. It made a good place. Old Tucson eventually purchased Mescal, and they could go down there and film other scenes as another town. But they would come out to White Stallion Ranch in that area and film scenes riding out in the desert. My friend Bunker de France, who stuntman for 30 years in the business, and now he does the Voice of the West for you guys out there sometimes, him and Harry. Bunker played an Indian one time in one of the episodes of High Chaparral, and he shot Barbara Hershey with an arrow and killed her. So, but earlier he was riding on a horse as one of the bad guys, so. But Bunker's idea was, if they don't see your face, then you can end up in 2 or 3 scenes. But he was in 46 episodes of High Chaparral because he'd be one of the bad guys riding the horses, or he'd be, one of the ranchers or something, and he'd ride away. You wouldn't see his face, so obviously he could show up later in the movie as an Indian, or in a different outfit as a different cowboy, so.
Russell's a rancher. I mean, he could get away with some of these things, right?
Well, Russell did that Joe and Casper, and that was a really cool clip. And of course, he's done like American's Horse, and I really like that segment because they had Michael and Russell in there talking to him and stuff about the ranch history and stuff. So,
well, I learned lately, Marty. I never thought to, but. I have a small bit in our reality show up at Circle Bar in Montana, and called The Wranglers, and
okay.
I'm not in it very much. But one of our guests friends actually pointed out I have an IMDb page, and sent it to me, and I'd never even thought to look, and then I was annoyed because they've only got about a third of my credits, so I went from complete ignorance to annoyance. It was
spoken like a true actor.
Well, yeah,
and I'm no actor.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. I mean, we're going to have a star out here on the walkway walking up to the ranch, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
There's an old saying, no part's too small.
Well, I've lived that one.
Yeah,
I love bunkers. What's that?
A 30-second clip was actually quite a bit of time on the screen.
Yeah,
so
that's
15, 20 seconds. It's pretty neat. I've been cut out of a lot of stuff, but then I end up in a lot of stuff too. So it's all fun. It's all to be a little involved in the business a little bit. The first time I got shot and killed in the movie was Ghost Rock, and I had more fun behind the scenes because I ended up getting to talk to Gary Busey, and one of the strangest conversations I've ever had.
I was going to say, we got to hear about that. Gary Busey.
Yeah, I met Gary over at Stage 2, and I'd been talking to the producer. So I asked Gary about some movie locations on Barbarossa, a movie he worked with Willie Nelson. They shot down at Brackenville, Texas. So Gary was nice telling me about where they shot the things. And then later, John, the producer, asked me, well, why didn't you talk to Gary about Randolph Scott? He's a big Randolph Scott fan. I said, okay, that'd be great. So I met Gary on the porch, and I started talking about Randolph Scott. And then he went off on a rant talking about philosophy and all this strange psychology. I was like totally lost, you know. But he talked for 15 minutes, and when I got done, I said, "What did we just talk about?"
Well, if you're with Gary Busey, that can happen.
Right.
Well, I think, Gary Busey had that bad head injury riding a motorcycle, but I
Yes,
think
he did.
he was probably goofy before that. I mean,
Well, he was.
I'm guessing. I don't know.
I don't know.
And there's another story I could tell you about him in the lunchroom.
Oh, yeah.
And he's talking about these two guys filming, but I better not talk about that.
Well, I didn't know until right now that we could use the word goofy anymore. I thought that was one of those.
Yeah, that's true. That is a forgotten word, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we're just expanding the vocabulary.
It's descriptive.
So, what else have you been in? Tell us some other. You got some more celebrity stories?
Well, I was a really good friend of Jan Shepard, who worked in the business all through the 50s and 60s. She actually was in over 530 productions.
Oh, my God.
And she was married to Dirk London, his real name was Ray Boyle. He played on the Life and Legend of Wyatt Earp as Morgan for 6 years. And then Ray was in a whole bunch of stuff in the 50s. And then he got out of the acting business in 61 after an episode of Perry Mason and worked for Warner Brothers for 22 years building props. So Jan and I would connect over the years about all these different actors, and we'd have conversations about. She was a big fan of Dan Duryea, by the way, and he had a garden. He lived back in New York at the time and had this garden he always attended to it by his apartment. So she said that he was just so crazy about his garden. But you think a tough guy like Dan Duryea, So you find out things about actors that Jan worked with, and her best friend was Amanda Blake from Gunsmoke. And Amanda was actually I'm actually living with Ray and Jan before she got the part. She lived with them for 2 years in her house, and when she finally got the part on Gunsmoke, Ray said, I think it's time you moved out, Amanda. Anyway, Jan appeared herself in 4 episodes of Gunsmoke. But I've been lucky, a lot of the film festivals, and to meet a lot of the old film stars. And of course, there was nobody greater than Don Collier. And my son, Gene, is actually beginning another book on Don Collier. He just finished his book on the film history of Arizona. And it's a real detailed book. As a matter of fact, he had so much information that he broke it into 3 volumes. And Bear Manor, I think, is the publisher. Gene's been published by, forgot the publisher, but anyway, he's got 7 books by a different publisher. So this time
is your son you're talking about.
Yeah, Gene Freese. And he probably knows more about actors and stuntmen than I do. And he's talked to all kinds of people. He, emailed Burt Reynolds back and forth. He was a friend of Robert Fuller. He was a really good friend with William Smith, the bad guy. He knew Bill before I did.
Robert Fuller shot here in whatever
yes, he
happened
did.
to Ann Alice. So
yes,
your son's 3-volume film history of Arizona, it's available?
He just presented it to the publisher, so it should be coming out. Okay. They're talking like January, February maybe.
Well, you're going to let us know, right? Because we're going to want.
They're going to be releasing volume 1, then volume 2, and the first volume is movies and actors, and then the second volume is television shows, and I think the third deals more with the actors and locations. But there was so much information. Stunt people like Bud Stout and Bunker de France and Neil Summers, they get their due because a lot of times people don't realize who they are.
Right.
They may be seen in 2 or 3 scenes. And that young Billy Young, when Robert Walker Jr. rode across the property, that was actually Bunker riding. And then when Robert Mitchum took off, it was Dave Casp who took their place riding across the ranch here. So those are really neat scenes. But, Gene made a point of getting there to doing some of the townspeople, locals in Tucson that worked on movies. He mentions those, like the Bell family. And so he spent 2 or 3 years researching this book. So he would be an interesting guest for you. Yuck, yuck.
No, it'd be
And,
terrific. Well,
in the future, I can give Stephen his information.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and get that book out, and then, because people are going to want to get those books. And you said this started with, he's doing a volume on Don Collier, and I knew Don, because of course I knew him when I was a little boy, when he was shooting High Chaparral here, and then he would come sometimes, he came a few times. He came out once or a few times for the High Chaparral reunions that we had here, and then he was...
Yeah, I was at one of those. There's another funny story. My wife and I was at a garage sale there in Tucson one Saturday morning. Don says, Marty, he called me and said, Marty, what are you doing tonight? And I said, oh, nothing, Don. He said, why don't you come out here to the ranch tonight and show that video you made about the movies on the ranch? You can loop it and just let it play, And I said, oh, okay. I'll just come out and put it on and leave because the dinner was going to be in the Longhorn room there.
Where we're sitting now.
Oh, okay. And so I said, well, I can just leave. And he said, no, you're my guest. You come out and you sit with me. And I said, oh, okay, Don. So Don and I's talking. There's a guy next to him talking about these different movies and shows he's been in. And he was talking about Hawkins with Jimmy Stewart. And his name was Murph Nutterman. And it wasn't Merv, it was Murph. And I got talking to this guy, and he was so fascinating. I started realizing all the different things he'd been on. And he was a rockabilly singer and guitar player, and he played with Del Shannon.
Wow.
Anyway, he was in the Hillbilly Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, whatever that is.
Hillbilly Rock.
I did not know there was such a thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I was so interested talking to him, I didn't realize that Don and everybody got up and left and got on the bus to go back to the casino. Anyway, Don and I, met over the years quite a few times, and I don't think there was anybody who ever was as friendly, in the business as Don Collier. He could make you feel like he knew you his whole life or something. He'd meet people, and come up and talk to him about the different series and stuff he'd been in.
Well, he was pitching a TV show to me, of all people, when he was 90
really?
years old.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
there's another interesting thing, Russell. He started a business back in the late 40s. I think he was in a Mitzi Gaynor production. And then in the early 50s, he was kind of struggling to make it. And then he got, in the Outlaws in the early 60s, he got the starring role. And he was in Safe and Home with Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris. And he had the lead in that.
Wow.
Anyway, after that, of course, he hit the High Chaparral. And he was married to a casting director, which really helped. But anyway, Don was actually 91 when he appeared in his last production, I think. He died in 92, and I talked to him just a couple weeks before he passed away. I did a documentary about his life. That was one of the things I was editing. Anyway, I got it to him and his family before he passed away. So now, Gene and I had been talking about, Don over the years, and when Gene finished up his book, he said, Dad, I'm thinking about writing something on Don Collier. So now we're talking back and forth, and he wants my videos and stuff, interviews and stuff I've had with Don, or that Don, had over the years. So I think that's Gene's next project. So.
Interesting. Now I'm going to go off on a tangent here, and I apologize to both of you. Marty, you said something in the first segment about how they built a small Indian village here on the ranch for a movie.
Yes.
Okay. I'm just wondering, with the number of films that were shot here, how did you logistically handle, and this is for Russell and you, how did you handle logistically running a dude ranch and shooting films and making sure that they didn't encumber one another? That's not an insignificant thing to manage.
Well, so I remember they actually had two different Indian villages, and the one you're talking about, I think that was
for High Chaparral.
Yeah, for High Chaparral, but two different. But I think that was Geronimo's. They had one up, and that one's down. There's a big rock, sort of mostly in the ground, right there at the gate. You're right. It's exactly right there at the gate, just both north and east of it. And they had it up for quite a long time, and it was patchy, wicky up looking things. And I remember it as a kid. But most of those High Chaparral shows were shot in the summer, so it didn't really overlap with the guests. And when our parents were running all those things, they knew those guys, and I their names are out of my. Well, one was Jack Dunlop, and the other one, I can't think of the other guy's name. But the main location scouts, and they kind of gave carte blanche. They kind of just collected the money and turned them loose. And some of those things, I was just looking up old photos. Some of those big High Chaparral Productions, multiple trucks, generators, old, but they kind of turned them loose. We got kind of burned. We got burned by a movie called Flashpoint, and they built a road on our ranch without our permission, and so we got really vigilant. And so we don't, big or small, we don't let anybody do anything unless we've got one of our staff babysitting them, because movies, big, small, whatever they're doing, these little documentaries, they're no problem. But some of these bigger productions, they can run over you pretty good. And I will say, George Clooney, his production, they made a lot of promises, and they honored them all. They were scrupulous in a good way.
That's good.
But a lot of them aren't. And so, to your question, Stephen, now we just babysit them. We just have someone on set. Yeah, because they, what are you gonna do? Once they've done it, it's done. Yeah. And we make a living from preserving this land, and so we're religious about it. So.
Well, I know how important preservation of what goes on here is to you, and I know that with the road that's being built out front, I know that you're not a big fan of that because it's interrupting some of that.
Yeah, I mean, we need, we hate it. But, you're
not supposed to say that, I don't think.
I think they're aware.
What road is that? What road is that, guys?
They're making Twin Peaks into a 4-lane.
Are they really?
Turning lane, yeah, and they're straightening it and they're lowering it over the. It's an $18 million production.
Ooh,
2 years. The construction company, Hunter Construction, really been great to work with. They're communicative. They're positive. They've been nothing but living up to their promises and doing the right thing. So anything we might say about that road is not about Hunter Construction. No, they've been wonderful.
And they're doing a good job.
It looks, I wouldn't know. But, it's a big production. We don't like it, but it's needed. Twin Peaks has turned into an interstate, so it's
with all them houses across from now.
It drains a significant amount of the Avra Valley traffic into Tucson. So there's all those mountains in that national park in the way, so it causes a traffic issue. So it's all. Anyway, we've run way out of time. You're gonna let us know when Gene's books are around, because we want to know about them. We want to get them. And Marty, I don't know. Do you have a website? Anybody want to contact you? Is there a way?
I don't have a website. I just, my wife has to tell me to get on Facebook to look at my son sometimes.
Yeah, I don't do Facebook, so I get it. Well, great to talk to you, and
you too, Russell.
We'll see you next time you're in Tucson.
Marty, thank you for taking the time.
What's that, Stephen?
Thank you for taking the time. I genuinely appreciate it.
Oh, you bet.
Thank you.
Enjoy it.
Thank you.
All right. Always good talking to you, Russell. And Stephen, thank you so much for making me part of your show.
Yeah, no, it's super. I can't believe we didn't do it before.
Thank you.
Well, that's a wrap, folks, and thank you for being with us on this coming up to Christmas time here at the ranch, and it's looking like Christmas around White Stallion Ranch, and hopefully you're making plans to have a great new year. And thank you for being with us. Thank you, Russell. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Marty. And it was so wonderful, to see Alan and Lynn back in the studio. It made for a wonderful reunion time. We're so grateful for everybody who has been a part of this program. We're now in our 5th season. Think about that. Some podcasts don't make it above 5 episodes. And we're into our 5th season. We have a lot of people to thank for doing that. And we certainly thank you for being faithful listeners and recommenders and supporting our sponsors. We are grateful. Thank you, thank you, thank you so very much for being a part of the Cowboy Up podcast. We'd love to hear from you, so please reach out to us. Here we go, the Cowboy Up podcast at gmail.com, the Cowboy Up podcast at gmail.com. And again, we are coming to you from the White Stallion Ranch, the historical, yes, movie place of the world, the White Stallion Ranch right here in Tucson, Arizona. And check us out for availabilities at whitestallion.com, whitestallion.com, and we're also connected to the mighty True Ranch Empire. I like to tease Russell about that. A number of the affiliated ranches that come along because we want to share the cowboy experience with lots of people. So we look forward to you being with us now and throughout the new year. I'm Stan Houston, and I thank you for being a part of this, and I am the leader of the Cowboy Spirit Radio Network. In 2025, we're hoping to get some of you not only on this program, but on your own radio show. So best and blessings are ride safely, take care, walk tall, and be proud, because you know what? You are a part of the Cowboy Spirit, the Western tradition, and that's what makes a lot of things great right here. All the best to you. Take care, and bye.